This past Friday at the end of my shift, I got a call from my eldest. She said, "Daddy, you got to come home quickly. My son was having a seizure." As I'm frantically getting out of the parking lot, I get a call from my wife. She said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm on my way home." And she said, "You need to pray over your son now." Now, I know there are some of you out there who may disagree with the way that I was praying, but I was brought up in a faith-filled home. And when we have to pray for intense situations, we do what we call is we take authority. We believe that Christ gave us authority here on earth. And so when we pray with that authority that he's given to us. And this is not a use and abuse of power or believing in a magic genie or anything like that, but it is recognizing that there are enemies of heaven that are coming against us, and we use that authority just the same way a police officer uses the authority bestowed to them by the state that they're in. That's it. So I start praying passionately over the phone as I'm driving home, praying that my son will be okay, praying that his body will calm down, praying that his mind will settle, praying that he has life and not death, that this will not end in death. I tell my wife that I'm pulling around the corner, and as I stop at the stop sign, I text my family and immediately tell them my son is on his way to the emergency room. He's having a seizure. He's in the ambulance now. Please pray. I pull up to the house and the ambulance is there, and my wife is outside pacing behind the ambulance in tears. And I look in the back of the ambulance and I see my son writhing on the gurney as they're trying to put the IV in. I asked my wife if she wants to be the one to go with him to the ER, and she said, "No way, you get in there, you go with him, you're better in that situation." Well, I'd just come from work. I literally just drove home from work. And I knew that the questions that they were going to ask me in the ER, I wouldn't necessarily be able to answer. So I'm texting my wife, "What do I need to know? What happened? Please tell me about the day." But we get there and immediately the doctor is trying to get him to revive, to wake up, to open his eyes, to stop clenching his jaw. And she starts talking to me about what they're going to have to do if he does not stop seizing on his own. They keep trying a bunch of different things for a few more minutes, and I'm trying to talk to him and get him to respond to me, and nothing is working. He is still doing what they're calling at this point posturing, which is not the term seizing because they're not looking at the brain activity, but they're seeing the same effects as if he was having a seizure, which is how his body will posture itself and get clenched up or fully extended in the legs and pointing at the toes. And he was doing this for a long, long time. Because the posturing wouldn't stop on its own, the doctor came to me and said, "We're going to have to intubate him in order to help him breathe, because we're going to have to give him some pretty heavy medicine to get his body to stop. If he doesn't stop and we don't intubate him, I'm nervous about what could happen to his brain. He may lose oxygen, and that can cause significant brain damage." As she's telling me about the process, she says, "I just want to let you know this is not a completely risk-free procedure, especially for somebody his age." She said there are some pretty significant risks. He could die if this doesn't go well, and I just need to have your approval to get this done. Well, I took the time to walk over to him again, tried to calm him, tried to do what I could to rouse him out of it on my own. Nothing was working, and I asked her to explain the process to me one more time, just so that we could have that extra amount of time to see if he would come out of it on his own, instead of having to rush into this. By the time she was done explaining it, he was still posturing, and I knew that this is what needed to happen. As I'm signing the paperwork, I'm sitting there thinking, would my wife have done this? Should I push back on this? But I kind of settled in myself that I had been the one who we decided needed to go. And so the decision was mine to make, and I felt like this was the best decision to make in the situation. As they're getting ready to intubate him, I get another nurse coming up to me to tell me that Lifelight is going to be coming to take him to Children's Vanderbilt downtown because they didn't have the staff or the facilities or the equipment to care for pediatrics in the emergency room that they do downtown. And because of the severity of the situation, they needed to Lifelight him instead of just take him in an ambulance. After they intubate him, the doctor comes out and she's really, really excited because they were able to do it. She was so pleased that it went well. She said he only coded for about 10 seconds in the middle of the process, but he really did come through well, and the tube is there and everything is fine. As she's telling me this, I feel like I'm having almost an out-of-body experience. I don't know why I'm calm in the situation, but I am completely calm. So much so that she even comments. She says, I appreciate how calm you are in this. You're really handling this very, very well. And as the days have gone by since that moment, I've reflected back wondering, why in the world was I so calm? I don't think that's the way I should have responded. I mean, that's my son. Good grief, I have one son. And she just told me that he'd coded, and I had no response. I just took it in stride, realized that he was okay, and was ready to move on to the next stage of getting him well. And the conclusion that I've come up with is just the fact that as I stopped at that stop sign and I asked my family to pray for me, and my wife had asked for lots of people to start praying as well, I genuinely believe that the Holy Spirit was with me in that moment, providing me peace. Peace in the midst of what would be an absolutely chaotic situation, but I was able to stay level-headed. And because of that, I was able to make decisions that I possibly may not have been able to make. I was able to stay calm for my wife whenever I called her to give her an update on where we were. And I would like to believe that the calmness that I had helped add to the calmness that the rest of the staff had so they could do their job, not worried that some guy outside the door is threatening to come in here and just make an absolute mess of what we're trying to do here for this little boy. Well, Life Flight arrived. They told me that I was going to be too big to go on the helicopter. Imagine that. But they took long enough getting everything ready and trying to get him ready to go to the helicopter. And my wife had time to make it all the way downtown. She told me later on her way there, she had a screaming match with God because she just anticipated getting the phone call from me that we'd lost our son. And she was not satisfied with even thinking that. And she was screaming at God, where are you? Why are you letting me go through this right now? Why are you not present? She said she showed up to the ER and there was one other lady waiting in the waiting room with her son. And they started talking and she started breaking down, telling her about what was going on. And the lady said, are you a believer? And my wife said, yes. And she said, he's going to be okay. I want you to know he's going to be okay. And they called that lady's name and she got up to leave to go back. And before she did, she came over and she prayed with my wife and said, this will not end in death. Well, once he arrived at the hospital, he still was posturing. It had been over an hour by now and they were really, really concerned about what could be causing it. They thought it might have been meningitis. They thought it could have been some other type of bacteria. They didn't necessarily rule out any type of epilepsy, but they were certain something significant was happening. At around 11:30, they got all of the neurological things connected to his head. They asked if we were willing to let them do a lumbar puncture to see if there was anything going on in the brain that could have been a virus or bug or something that could have triggered this. And we were wrestling with all of the things that they were wanting to do and just wanting to make sure that we didn't miss anything, but also that we were aware of the risks that could happen. So my wife looked at me and she said, I don't know if we should do this. Is this what's right? And ultimately, yes, we do. We want to know what caused this so that whenever he's better, we can do whatever we can to make sure this doesn't happen again. Now, in this children's hospital, they have a room for parents if they are staying the night so they can sleep if they would like to in a room with an actual bed, not just that couch that folds out. So they led us to that while they were getting ready for this lumbar puncture thing. So at 11:45 p.m., I crash on the bed and I can't quite make it back up. My wife, however, can't go to sleep. I completely understand. So she said, would you be upset if I go in there and lay with him? I don't want him to be alone. I said, no, absolutely. Thank you for being willing to do it. Please go. I slept through the night. She did not. She was up all night. But the next morning I found out that as she was up in the middle of the night, he started stirring. And at 3:30, the staff came in and said, he seems to be doing well. He seems agitated by the tube down his throat. Would you like us to take that out? As she's responding to the nursing staff, she hears her phone notify her that she's got a new text message. She didn't think anything of it because she said, who in the world's going to be texting me at 3:30 in the morning? It may be some other notification, but I'm obviously here with my son, so I'm going to focus on him. Yes, by all means, please take the tube out. Now keep in mind, after they got him sedated, after an hour of trying, he's been out this whole time. So at 3:30, he started opening his eyes for the first time and he's coming awake and they're getting ready to take the tube out. When my wife went over after they got the tube out and she was getting ready to lay down back with him, she wanted to see what her text message said. Well, her friend had texted her at that exact moment that she was praying for her at that moment. And she wanted to let her know that he was going to wake up and they were going to take the tube out and he was going to be okay. As you can imagine, my wife lost it. She was in complete just ugly cry mode and just overwhelmed at how much she felt God with her in this situation. We continued to receive notification after notification of people in our lives who we have talked to recently, but also those we haven't talked to in a long time from here in Tennessee, all across the country, letting us know that they are praying for us, that they're praying for him. And we have both felt overwhelmed by just the support that we have and how much God has moved to reassure us in the midst of what can make you feel completely helpless. He made sure that we knew that he saw us and he was with us through it. Well, they continued to run all their tests on Saturday, and finally, after finding nothing, they came to us on Sunday to let us know that this indeed did look like what's called a febrile seizure. Something that happens in kids under the age of 5. It can be brought on by a fever. My son actually had one a year before. Same thing, but this time, because of the intensity and the longevity of the posturing, it was called a febrile seizure event. They gave us medication so that if something like this happens again in the future, instead of it building and escalating like it did in this situation, they want us to try and stop the seizing or the posturing after 5 minutes so that it doesn't get out of hand. We completely agree. We don't want to revisit this again, but if by chance it does happen, we are extremely thankful to have this medicine now so that he won't have to endure such a long, miserable experience. They reiterated what the neurologist has said, that there was no signs of any epileptic seizure and that there were not any signs indicative of brain damage, that ultimately he would be walking out with a clean bill of health. And we are extremely grateful. My wife has wanted to talk about this, but she is just such an absolute wreck, still processing it all, just reliving it, and just overwhelmed by the generosity, the kindness of the people around us, by the overwhelming presence of God in the midst of it. And so she asked me last night, she said, "Are you doing a video anytime soon? I'll just go ahead and post that because I don't think that I can say anything. I don't have enough words to say." So for those of you who are watching who do know what happened, and you did know when it was happening, thank you so much. From the bottom of our hearts, we are extremely thankful for you in our lives. We're thankful that you are prayers. We're thankful that you are present. We hope that you know how near and dear to our hearts you are, and that we count it an absolute honor to call you our friends. We thank God that you are in our lives and that we get to be part of your lives. For those of you who did not know, but you still care, thank you. It really does mean a lot to know that there are people out there who we may never even get to meet face to face, but there is still a connection. As I was preparing to do this video, I asked God to help me. I said, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to talk about. Ultimately, what I want is for you to get glory through this situation. So if anything that I did or said in the middle of it or throughout it, if it messed you up from seeing God's glory, I apologize. That was me. But I hope that you heard about an ever-present God who is with us in the midst of the darkest storms, who is Emmanuel, God with us, who said he would never leave us nor forsake us, even to the ends of the earth. And if you don't know that God, he wants to have a relationship with you. He wants it so much, he sent his son to die for you. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you appreciated the story of God moving in the midst of a very stressful weekend for us. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider subscribing. If you like the content, give me a thumbs up, put something down in the comments section, share it on social media, and I will see you next time when we can share a cigar and change the world.